on, you guys? Paul here from Bike Nerds coming at you guys with another video and yet another fat bike. I don't know if you guys were around for the last video, but we got us another one. And let's just go ahead and call this one a rescue bike because that's pretty much what I did with this one. And it starts off with a tale as old as time, basically me scrolling Marketplace, looking at bikes, and then I see this guy pop up. Now I was a couple towns over and the guy was actually asking a really good price for it, which that immediately caught my eyes. And then I also noticed that it was listed as some kind of weird brand. He had it listed as I think it said native fat bike or something like that. Just something I never heard of. So I clicked on it, and as I started to look around and look closer, I noticed that it had Specialized ground control tires on it. And then I noticed back here that it had like what appeared to be an NX 12-speed drivetrain on it. So at that point I knew it wasn't some cheap like Costco fat bike. So I reached out to the guy and asked him if I could go take a look at it, and he said, sure, come on out. So I went out there and let's just say it looked a whole lot better in the pictures than it did in person. I don't know if you guys can tell, but this bike has been like spray bombed this weird blue color. The guy has smeared some kind of like anti-seize auto like assembly lubricant all over the drivetrain. He's got the cable routed so funky. This thing shifted and rode like absolute garbage. And I just noticed there was just all kinds of little weird things wrong with it. Same thing with the front brakes. Another funny story with the front brakes I'll tell you as we're cleaning it up. Anyway, like I said, I was initially going to walk away, but the guy said he was negotiable in the price. So at that point, I just threw the biggest lowball offer I could at him, and he took it. So yeah, picked this thing up. And this one needs a lot more love than that last fat bike that we worked on. That one just more or less just needed a bath and a tune-up. This one needs a lot more love. This thing shifts terribly. He's got the cable routing all messed up. It looks like this rear axle's been swapped out. I don't know what the deal is with that. Like I said, he smeared some kind of anti-seize lube all over the drivetrain, which is going to be a nightmare to get off. This Cassette's got some weeble wobble going on to it. The front brake, like I said, I was just going to walk away from it. But when the guy said he would take my offer, I was like, whatever, what have I got to lose? So anyway, picked up another fat bike. So I figured I'd include you guys in this little adventure. We can go through it and clean it up and get this one dialed just like we do you know what we do around here. We get these bikes dialed, so let's go ahead and get into it. All right, guys, so we made it down to the dungeon, and before we even get started cleaning this thing up, I just wanted to show you guys just how horrible this thing is shifting. And the reason this thing is shifting so horribly is because he just has this cable routed completely wrong, and as a result, this thing is just shifting so erratically. Here, I'll show you real quick. Let's get this wheel going. So I'm gonna click up one click. As you can see, it went up 3. Let's go one more click up. It went up 3.5. Let's go one more. That doesn't sound very good. Let's go down 1. As you can see, it went down 3. Let's go down one more. We're pretty much all the way down at the bottom of the cassette. So out of the 12 selectable speeds, we only have 3 that are actually working. And as you go through the gears, you can just feel everything clattering and banging into each other, and it is just all sorts of out of whack. So all right, so a couple of factors that I think are making this thing shift like absolute garbage is when you get back here and look at that derailleur hanger, you can see that it appears to be kind of bent inward a little bit, so that's automatically going to make the bike shift poorly from the get-go. But the main reason this thing is just jumping all over the place gear-wise is because if you look down here, if you see where this cable is, you can see that it is clearly supposed to be routed around this little leverage arm here, and the fact that he has it bypassed and going straight to the anchor point is just making this thing shift all out of whack. It's basically throwing off all the pull ratio points and not giving it the proper leverage it needs to go through and walk through the gears. But like I said, just something as stupid as having your cable routed incorrectly can make the bike shift like absolute garbage, as you guys saw. So I think I'm going to start with just snipping this cable because it needs to be replaced anyway, removing the rear derailleur, pulling the wheel off, removing the cassette, and just going through everything and making it right. So just wanted to point that out before we started. All right, so starting off, take care of that. Go ahead and pull this chain off. The thing I like about these SRAM derailleurs is it's got this cage lock, which makes taking chains off very simple. There we go. Try to carefully get this chain out of here. God, what a nightmare. It's God, look at it, got paint all over it. Anti-seize, and look at my hands just from touching this stuff. Ugh, what an idiot. I'm just gonna go ahead and pull this derailleur off. It wasn't very tight to begin with. All right, so we got that. Let's go ahead and yank this wheel out of here. All right, so now that we got the wheels and everything off, we can go ahead and start cleaning it. Get our hot water going. This silver never sees stuff is just a nightmare. I mean, it works great for what it's intended to, but it is not intended to be smeared all over drivetrains and bicycles. All right, so next, let's go ahead and get this derailleur cleaned up. All right, so we got that looking pretty good. It's a lot better than it was. All right, guys, so at this point, we got the bike all cleaned up. We got all that funk and gunk off of it. I went ahead and threw the back wheel in it because what I think I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take it up to my local bike shop, throw it in their stand and use their derailleur alignment hanger tool, just because that's typically step one when it comes to tuning up a bike, is making sure that your derailleur hanger is actually straight and not bent. Because if your derailleur hanger is bent, no matter how well you dial it in, it's always gonna be shifting out of whack. So step one, make sure your derailleur hanger is straight, and yeah, we'll go from there. All right, guys, so I just returned home from the bike shop, and as I suspected, that rear derailleur hanger was way out of whack, but we got it all straightened out. I picked up a new cable for it. So I think what I'll do now is I'm gonna go ahead and pull this back wheel off it again, remove that cassette, and just go through and inspect it, because like I said, there's something funky going on back there. So let's do that. All right, so I pulled the rear wheel off, and I don't know if you guys will be able to see this, but you can just, this whole cassette has a lot of, like, seems like it has like a good 1/16th to almost 1/8 of an inch of wiggle to it. So I'm gonna go ahead and just pull it all apart and just inspect it, because like I said, I suspect there's something going on with this axle. This axle feels all crunchy and nasty, so ugh, like I said, you just touch the anti-seize stuff, it gets everywhere. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull this cassette off and just kind of inspect everything. And to remove the cassette, it's really easy. You just need one of these proprietary sockets that fits into these splines here. You're gonna need a chain whip, which holds the whole cassette and everything in place while you take it apart. You also need a big boy wrench. So make sure everything's set. Pop it loose. Once you got it loose, it just typically unthreads, and go ahead and set all this stuff aside here. Just kind of slip the whole thing off. Easy as that. Just cleaned it out the best I can. And I'm gonna go through and pull all this apart, because you can just, I don't know if you guys can hear how nasty these bearings sound. Yeah, and that is just not a healthy sound. So I'm gonna go ahead and just pull this axle out, pull all the bearings out, go through it, and clean them up. Grab my cone wrenches. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pop this little rubber cover off. It's as simple as that. Now we can loosen up this actual cone nut. You want to always hold the axle in from the other side, because as you loosen this, everything's just going to want to fall out the other side. Now with that cone nut out of there, you can really see that there is like zero grease in there, like none. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna slip this entire axle out. This axle doesn't appear to be way out of the ordinary. I mean, it appears to be, it's obviously the proper length and everything, but like I said, this bike normally comes with a skewer, a quick release axle. So why it was replaced is unknown to me, but somebody changed it. Make sure you don't lose any of your bearings. Yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and pull it all out and clean it. Start by popping this guy out here. Well, it's just kind of a retainer to hold everything in place and kind of to act as a dust shield. Remove the bearings. It's actually pretty simple. What I like to do is I like to take one of these magnet pens and just kind of stick get all the bearings. Just put them into a small container. We got all those bearings out. And wipe all this old nasty grease out of there. If you can even call that grease. It's more or less a mixture of sand and grease. It's probably a good idea to remove this rotor so I don't risk contaminating it with grease, but I'm lazy right now and I don't feel like it. So we're just gonna roll with it. All right, so we got this side pretty well clean. Let's go ahead and do it to the other side now. This grease isn't terrible on this side. The non-drive side though was pretty bad. Grease was dried up and hardened a lot, and there's a lot of gritty like sand particles in it. And wipe and clean everything out as best as you can. We're going to be repacking it with all brand new fresh grease. Going to set everything properly and it is going to be glorious. So as far as the weeble wobble in that cassette is concerned, I'm almost thinking that just might be the nature of the beast with this particular hub, because I'm not seeing any real red flags or anything. Cleaning the bearings is easy. And you can see just rolling them around. Cleans them up pretty good. Let's grab a clean piece now. You can probably tell just by looking which ones are on the drive side and which ones are on the non-drive side just by their discoloration. It's almost like these got like hot or something. I don't know, but either way, kind of strange. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Huh. I wonder if I lost one. Yeah, I found it. It was on the floor. So you gotta be kind of careful with these little bearings. They like to just roll away on you. All right, so I'm gonna start with the drive side. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna apply some fresh grease in there. It's best to do this like horizontally, like laying flat like this. I'll try to angle it so you guys can kind of see what's going on here. Just like to throw in a nice big blob of grease. Not too much, but not too little. You can be a little generous with it. Grease is cheap. And once you got the grease in there, I like to have the wheel laying flat horizontally, and then you can start setting your ball bearings in there. And the grease will actually hold all the ball bearings in place if you're careful. Remember, we had 9 per side, so make sure you put all 9 of them in there. 8, and then last but not least, number 9. Also helps to smear a little bit of grease inside this axle seal. I mean, why not? Let's go ahead and reinstall this axle seal. Should just press right in. So we got our axle seal in. Now it's time to put our axle in. Again, why not? Just throw a blob of grease. Just send, get all the cat hair off of it. And just send it home. So now that we got the drive side packed and loaded up, just flip the wheel over. Do it carefully because I don't want to lose any of the ones I just put in there. Grease this. Decent amount of grease in there. And start loading our bearings in. These are a little bit easier to load in there because I got the axle going through it, so that way the bearings won't roll out and fall through the center. Our bearings packed in there. axle seal back in there. There we go. She just needed a couple of love taps. I'll start threading this other cone nut on there. We got a cone nut on there. Let's go ahead and throw these spacers and washers back on there. Then throw the lock nut back on there. Now we got it all greased up, put back together. We can go ahead and set our axle. Actually feels kind of loose. All right, so that feels pretty good. We're gonna roll with that. We can go ahead and throw our cassette stack back on it. Let's find the little one. There's the little one up top. Little splines, little splines, little splines. So we threw a dab of grease on our lock ring. Let's find our socket now. There we go. Yeah, it feels a little bit better, but at least our bearings, we know our bearings are good. And last but not least, let's put our little dust cover back on. There we go, 100%. All right, so I got the bike in the stand now. We went through the entire back wheel, got everything dialed with that. So what I think I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go ahead and put this rear derailleur back on it. All right, so the rear derailleur is back on, and yeah, that whole hanger and everything just looks a hell of a lot straighter than it was. So I'm glad we actually took this thing up to the bike shop and handled that. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and throw a new cable in this thing. Change the cable on these is actually really easy. I just typically remove it. There's a little rubber cover that pops right off and you kind of swing it to the side there. And you can kind of just push the cable back in. And so this cable is pretty had it. However, I'm not going to completely discard it. There's plenty of cable here to still work as a dropper post cable, so it's good to keep these around for stuff like that. You never know. So we got our brand new cable. Just like we removed it, we're just gonna kind of fish it through the hole there. So we got our cable in, anchored down. All right, you guys, so we got the new cable ran. All we got to do now is just get it hooked up and anchored down to this derailleur. And before we do that, we're going to go ahead and make sure our shifter is shifted all the way down, which we're good there. And then we can go ahead and proceed with routing our cable properly. All right, so first we're going to feed our cable in and around this little pulley wheel here, this little guide wheel, which is simple enough. Just kind of push it and it will just kind of work its way around. And now we can come around here and run our cable through there. Like it's supposed to be. Once you got it wrapped around where it needs to be, just go ahead and pull it snug. One thing I forgot to do is I forgot to zero out this barrel adjuster up here. All right, so we zeroed out our barrel adjuster. Now we can go ahead and bring this around here. Lock it down. Let's see how many shifts we got now. Yeah, see how much better it works when you got the cable routed correctly? All right, guys, so I went through and I checked this chain. The chain, although it's ugly and dirty, it's actually still in really good shape. It's not stretched or anything, so I'm just gonna go ahead and run it. You know, it'd be one thing if these chains were $15 like they used to be, but they're like 40 bucks now, so. Drop it down. All right, so we got our quick link here. Let's go ahead and get this chain all dialed in. Now, one thing you want to take note of is your quick link does have a directional arrow on it, so you do want to pay attention to that. Tug and snap it in. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pop this non-drive side pedal off real quick, just so we can go through, get the shifting all dialed and adjusted. I don't have to worry about this pedal hitting on my bike stand. All right, so now I got a little more room here and go through and see what's up. Go up one, up two, take the barrel adjuster a little bit. Up one, up one. There we go, all the way up. And it feels like our limiter is set just where it needs to be. We're not going to worry about overshifting. Whereas before, that derailleur hanger bent, it would have shifted right over and went right into the spokes. So down 2, 3. Seems to be working good now. Go ahead and throw some lube on this chain while we're at it. There we go. Run through the gears again. 12. 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Suppose we can go ahead and snip this excess cable now. So I don't have any cable ends here, but one thing you can do if you don't have any, sometimes you can strip off a little piece of scrap wire, which everybody's got some scrap wire laying around, I think. Use a pokey tool, stretch that out a little bit. And sometimes you can just, there you go, simple as that. You don't gotta worry about it fraying or falling off. Seems to be shifting pretty good right now. I'm going to see if we can get it to shift a little better though. Alright, so this here is called the B tension screw, and I'm going to go ahead and make sure that is set properly. And to do that, basically SRAM has this little plastic gauge that you can use. And to use it, you basically shift your bike up into the second from the biggest sprocket. And you take your alignment gauge and you fit it. And if you're lined up properly, basically this arrow is going to be pointing at the dead center of this jockey wheel screw. So as you can see, we're slightly off. So I'm going to go ahead and just throw a quick turn on that. See if we can really dial it in. All right, so I'm going to turn it inward just a little bit. As you can see, now we're perfectly in line. Yeah. Just that little teeny tiny bit. Made a nice noticeable difference. All right, so we're all good back here. All right, guys, so as of now, we got the back end pretty much gone through. Now I just got to go through and do this front end now because this thing has no front brakes on it whatsoever. All right, guys, so funny story about these brakes here. The day that I actually went and picked this bike up, I drove my little white car, so to fit this thing in the trunk of my car, I had to pull the front wheel off. When I pulled the front wheel off this bike, I heard something fall onto the ground, and you guys are not going to believe it. This guy literally made a brake pad out of like his old credit card. Like, look at that. The guy literally made a brake pad, you know, and he didn't drill the hole in it. So like I said, there was no screw holding it in. These were just sitting in there like this. And when I pulled the front wheel off, they all fell right out. Luckily, I had another matching pad laying around from one of my other bikes. So we kind of lucked out in that sense. Go ahead and slip these into place where they belong. Also going to need one of our retainer clips just to hold the pads in place. All right, we've got brake pads now. Let's go ahead and get these brake cables lubed up. Line up our slot, pull lever, pull back, pop back out just like that. All right, to lube the cables, I like using this stuff here. I'm also going to reroute this cable. Do this one now. Put a couple drops back here. Feels much better. All right, guys, so another thing that I want to do is I want to rearrange this little cluster here, because as you can see, he's got the shifter mounted inboard of the brake lever here, which as a result's got the shifter encroaching onto this grip nearly halfway. I mean, you only got about 3 inches of grip to hold on to before you're just banging your thumb into that. So I'm going to go ahead and switch that all around. And while we're at it, we're also going to nut and bolt check the stem and make sure all this stuff's good to go too. Start by pulling this grip off. Get our shifter on there. Now, do our brake lever. Slide our grip back on. See how much more room I got now already? Just by flipping that around. So I'm just gonna set this up. Just gonna set this up temporarily. And once I get the bike on the ground, then I'll go ahead and really dial it in and lock everything down. Just go ahead and, so I'm just gonna nut and bolt check everything. I like to crack them loose, just to make sure that they're not seized. That one was kind of loose, actually. All right, so we're all good up here. Now with that stand out of our way, we can go ahead and get the wheel back in it. I just like installing the wheels when the bike is on the ground and upside down. That way you know that the wheel fell into place and it's not sitting in there crooked. So we're good there. Oh, gotta throw this pedal back on it. All right, cool. All right, guys, so at this point we got the bike all cleaned up. We got it all tuned up. It's shifting great. Got that back wheel all sorted out. Got these brakes working great. The only thing we really got left to do now is just kind of go through it and personalize it, adjust the controls, adjust the seat height, get it fitted right for us. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. All right, so I'm gonna start off with these handlebars because these things are about as crooked as a politician. Plus I also noticed there's this extra spacer up top here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove it. I'm gonna put that spacer beneath the stem. That's gonna bring the stem and the handlebars up just that extra little bit. So undo our clamping bolts, slip the bars off, that spacer down there now. Go ahead and lock our stem cap back down. I like to squeeze the front brake and rock the front end just a little bit, just to make sure the bearings and everything are seated. Now you just got to align your handlebars, make sure your handlebars are straight. That looks pretty good. And lock it down. All right, cool. Let's go ahead and adjust these levers now. That feels pretty good. I'm gonna lock this shifter down. That'll do just fine. All right, and there it is. Now, granted, I'm not a super huge fan of these winged grips, but I'm probably gonna end up changing those anyway. But as of now, everything feels good. Let's go ahead and adjust this seat. Now, initially, the seat was kind of pitched down a little bit. If anything, I like my seat kind of pointing up just a tad. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so in an attempt to make this thing look a little less crackhead, I removed all the headset spacers again. I took them over to the sink and I cleaned all the paint and overspray off of them. I also rerouted that shifter cable over to the other side of the bike, which made it just flow and work a little better. And I also flipped that quick release axle over to the correct side. And just by changing those 3 simple things, it just makes the bike look a whole lot better now. Okay, so at this point in the game, we got this thing pretty much dialed and ready to go. So I guess there's only one thing left to do now. Let's take this thing for a ride. All right, you guys, so it's a beautiful sunny day out and the snow is rapidly melting. But anyway, we're out here cruising it around and so far so good. Got my tires pumped up pretty firm, so they're rolling a little faster, but this thing rides nice. I'm actually considering cutting these bars down a little bit because they're like 800 millimeters wide. I don't know why people would want an 800 mil wide bar on a fat bike, but hey, to each their own, I guess. Love these things. Fat bikes are so much fun. They just monster truck over practically anything. You just hear them tires rumbling. These things are awesome. You guys can probably already tell, but all the snow has been pretty much rapidly melting, which means springtime is right around the corner. I couldn't be any more stoked. But in the meantime, I'm pretty limited as to what trails we can ride. As you can see, trails are pretty darn muddy. This thing's riding really nice. Feels nice and solid. And it just rolls. Tell you what, boy, this thing just rolls for days. Fat bikes are awesome. All right, pretty sweet. This thing's riding awesome. Let's see if I can climb up this one-handed holding a camera. If I can do that, I will be officially impressed. Here we go. Motorboating. Oh my God, we're doing it. We're doing it. Yeah, we did it. Wow. One-handed, holding the freaking camera. Heck yeah. Tell you what, that 12 speed in the back. Phew. This thing climbs like a freaking goat. Other than the rumbling of the tires, this thing is surprisingly very quiet. Like as you go over bumps and roots and stuff, I don't hear really any chatter. Awesome. I kind of almost wish I would have kept the seat from the other fat bike, because that seat was way more comfortable than this one. But I digress. She rides nice. She's a great riding bike. Man, so far this thing's riding really nice. Let's see if it does wheelies. does wheelies. Alright guys, so here we are at the jump line. Now another common misconception about fat bikes is that they can't jump. Well, let's find out. Alright you guys, so despite common misconception, the science has proven that fat bikes can jump. So yeah, myth busted. Now what about skinnies? Can fat bikes possibly do skinnies? I don't know, let's find out. And of course it wouldn't be official if we didn't give it the old bike nerd stair set of doom test, so let's give it a try. Alright you guys, so we've been cruising this thing around for the better part of an hour already, and so far I'm very impressed with just how well this bike is riding. Like I said, I was initially going to walk away from this thing because it needed so much work, but after we gave it a little bit of love, it's definitely a great riding bike. Tire pressure is nice and dialed, it's shifting through the gear is awesome, and this thing climbs like an absolute go with that 12-speed on the back. Like I mentioned, the handlebars are a little wide for my liking, but we can always trim those down later. But yeah, as of now, I'm very happy with this bike. It's kind of a bummer that the snow is already melting, but hey, these things are fun year-round, so I'm glad we picked this one up. I might change a few things in the future. I might add a dropper post to this one because I do plan on holding on to this one. A few upgrades would be nice. But anyway, you guys, I think that's going to do it for this one. If you guys actually stuck around and watched this entire video, I just want you to know that I really appreciate you. If you haven't already, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It really helps the channel out. We're nearly at 200 subscribers, so if we can round 200 subscribers, that would be amazing. But anyway, you guys, like I said, I appreciate you guys watching. This is Paul from Bike Nerds signing out, and I'll see you in the next one. As you can see, trails are pretty. Holy shit.
Yeah, I got flow masters. I got no mufflers on my pickup truck.